item, Monty?
Yeah. Just seeing if we had a quorum, which I think we do at this point. All right, good morning, everybody. This is the, let me see, May 8th meeting of the Affordable Housing Advisory Board for the City of Lawrence. I'm Monty Sokup, the current chair. We are going to take roll and then we'll get started. So I have Karen Willey.
Present.
Christina Gentry.
Present.
Erica Zimmerman.
Here.
Shannon Oury.
I am unmuted.
You are? Oh my.
Oh, I'm muted?
No.
Okay, we're good. Okay, sorry. Phil Englehart.
Here.
Nicholas Ward.
Here.
Dana Ortiz.
Here.
Sarah Waters.
Here.
Monty Sokup is here. Have I missed anyone? Okay. With that, I will turn it back over to Leah to make the opening kind of ground rule statements, and then we'll go from there. Thanks, Leah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, everyone. I have a few housekeeping items for this hybrid meeting. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on the city's YouTube channel and cable channel 25. Please remember to mute yourself during the meeting when you are not speaking. The chat function for this public meeting is disabled. All chats will go directly to me. Unless you are participating during the meeting, please turn your video off. This allows the active meeting participants to be seen on screen. You will still be able to hear the meeting. When you're participating, please turn your video on. If you have any trouble, you can send me a chat. The city reserves the right to mute people or turn individual videos off to minimize distractions during the meeting. And now just a few notes on public comment. When the chair calls for public comment, individuals attending in person should approach the podium to indicate they wish to speak. The podium can be raised and lowered, and we encourage you to use this feature to ensure your comments are heard. Individuals participating via Zoom should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak. Please leave your virtual hand raised until you are called on. Individuals will be called on in the order they appear on the meeting host screen. Please state your name before speaking. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Thank you, and now I'll turn the meeting back over to Mr. Sokup.
Thank you. All right, at this point, we will open up for public comment. We don't have anyone here in the room. Do we have anyone online?
See anybody?
Right. Seeing none online, I'm going to close public comment. We'll move on to the minutes. Item B on the agenda, I would entertain a motion to accept or the minutes as written.
Nicholas Ward, I second.
All right.
We haven't had a motion yet.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from April 10th.
All right. Have a motion. Anybody?
Christina Gentry, I second that motion.
All right. We have a motion to accept the minutes and a second. Is there any discussion on that item? All right. Seeing none, I will call the vote. Same order I called roll. So Karen Willey.
Aye.
Christina Gentry.
Yes.
Erica Zimmerman.
Aye.
Shannon Oury.
Aye.
Phil Englehart.
Aye.
Nicholas Ward.
Aye.
Dana Ortiz.
Yes.
Sarah Waters.
Yes.
Monty Sokup, yes. Motion passes 9-0. All right, we'll move right into the regular agenda, and I would say we don't have a lot of items, but we have some pretty meaningful and complex items. So buckle in and we'll get started here. The first item is to provide feedback on the notice of funding opportunity materials. And then once we do the NOFO information, then we'll move into the actual application and the timeline and the matrix if we have time. So with that, I am going to actually, since Leah did most of the work, we had a small committee that looked at this, but Leah really assembled all this information and got our thoughts put in one place. So I'm going to have her lead the conversation on the NOFO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One moment, please.
Oh, we just take just a second. I'm going to note that Mark is joining us. You can sit anywhere up here.
You can take this one. I'll move back there. No. I'm not very, or so.
We can sit next to Jeff, maybe.
Mark,
There's one right
You
here.
can sit right here. I'll just scoot over a little bit.
Mr. Chair, this is Sarah Waters. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, can you also, we've got several other members you didn't call. Are they absent today? Planned absence? Thomas Howe, Trent C&T? Like, I just was curious. Did I miss something?
They're absent today. They're not here.
Okay, just clarify.
Get all the
You
mic.
get two. Okay. All right. So go ahead, Leah.
Okay. Thank you, friends. Okay. Now I need to figure out technology. All right. So I am going to share screen, and as Monty said, we're going to review the NOFO first. And so the intent of the review today is to really get very granular. And so I'm going to go through it section by section and make sure that we collect all comments and recommendations for changes. If there's not unanimous agreement, then we'll need further discussion and maybe votes on certain items if consensus cannot be reached. I would say it's pretty critical that we hear all comments for changes today. We will look at this in June again, but it needs to be approved in June in order to meet our timeline as approved a few months ago. And so I really, as Monty and I were discussing the agenda, we are assuming that going through the NOFO application and matrix take about an hour. So as Monty said, buckle in. And this really sort of a working agenda item to get through all of these items. So before we get started, also just wanted to express my gratitude and appreciation for Sarah, Monty, and Dana, who served on the NOFO update and met several times and had a lot of great discussions and made some great recommendations, changes that have already been incorporated. So without further ado, table of contents. We will not discuss that, although I see one little formatting thing that I will update. In terms of the introduction, this is just standard language that's in the bylaws regarding the purpose of the Affordable Housing Advisory Board and the Housing Trust Fund. This is standard language that we've used in past NOFOs, and this was not changed from previous years. Are there any comments or recommendations in terms of the introduction language? All right, seeing none. Applications are accepted. This part is important because if projects do not fall in alignment with one of these categories, then they will be considered ineligible and not reviewed or considered for funding. And so it's critical, one, every as a project that will be considered is included, and that if there's anything that we don't want to be considered, that it's removed at this time. So housing or land acquisition, a new affordable development, rehab, accessibility modifications, vouchers, And then the two new ones, projects that increase community awareness on affordable housing and projects that advance racial equity in housing. At the start, there was one recommendation that a member had made in writing that we include housing support services or short-term rental assistance into the project list of applications that will be considered. And I wanted to get some feedback from on that from the board. My understanding is that applications for short-term one-time rental assistance were considered during the pandemic in order to meet emergency response, but that because that does not ensure long-term or permanent housing stability, that's not something that the AHAB wished to continue to provide funding support for. And so I'd love some discussion on that, and I see that unmuted, so I'm wondering if you already have, yeah.
Yeah, my only question was, I think we had an individual applicant maybe in the last round and talk about rehabilitation, that we maybe clarify whether that has to be, an individual can come for rehabilitation.
So I think that's covered, this Monty, so I think that's covered in the actual application where it says eligible applicants. So individuals are not eligible, it's other companies. So I think that's covered in the application when we get there.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're being clear with people.
Right. Good comment.
Yeah, and I'll skip ahead to, it's on the NOFO, there's a list of applicant eligibility. And so it does not explicitly say owner occupied units are disqualified, but it also does not list individuals or owner occupied units. And so do you all think that we should explicitly state that that is ineligible? Or do you think that just having a list of applicants that are eligible infers that?
I mean, it can't hurt to, this Shannon Outreach Housing Authority, it can't hurt to be explicit, because I mean that, I just felt for that gentleman to go through the whole process. And I just think, let's just make it really clear that this is different than what you can go through the, Danny's and get assistance.
Any disagreements about explicitly adding that owner occupied units are not eligible? And I clean up this language, but I'm just.
Sorry, Leah, would it make more sense to say like individual applicants can't apply as opposed to saying owner occupied housing is not available for it? Because there could be an organization that comes in with a project to rehab multiple occupied homes. I wouldn't want to close that door if that's something that AHAB considers at all. Is that kind of thing.
Yeah, so I guess I was thinking for their own units, but
Yeah, so it might need to be pretty clear this kind of thing that we're not.
so I will clean up that language. But do you think adding the word individuals in somewhere in there makes it more clear?
I think so.
Okay.
Defer to the group since I haven't been through this before.
Okay, I'm going to go back up. So on the discussion of vouchers, or not vouchers, one-time rental assistance, is that something that the AHAB would like to continue funding through the trust funds or consider funding? My recollection from the retreat is that the AHAB had decided to no longer fund one-time emergency rental assistance. But if I'm incorrect, then now is the time to to clarify that, because, for instance, it would disqualify the Housing Stabilization Collaborative program.
That's Monty Sokop Chair. My recollection from the retreat was that we all leaned towards creating the creation of units and accessible units. I don't know that it's exclusive of rental assistance, but I know that our preference certainly leaned that direction.
Do we know what all the funding sources are for the housing stabilization? Because that's through the county, and the largest single entity that gets paid by those funds would be the city of Lawrence for utility assistance. So I don't think it's a bad thing if some of that city of Lawrence money also cycles through there, but I know, Shannon Oury and others have worked on that, the creation of that, and I'm not sure what the relationship is with AHAB. My understanding, when you're saying that, was that individuals shouldn't be coming to AHAB for short-term rental assistance. I think it might be a different discussion whether the entity that kind of covers all housing for the city and county, if they couldn't come and ask for funding. But I don't know what the history has been.
This is Leah Roseland, Affordable Housing Administrator. I can speak to some of that, and perhaps somebody else could fill in if I'm missing it. The HSC is funded through the AHAB as well as Douglas County, and my understanding is other local grants. I do not believe it was ever the intent of the AHAB funding to cover utilities assistance. It was an application was denied last year, for example, by the Willow, because they were making an argument, which is valid, that they were stabilizing housing by providing one-time or short-term assistance for any life needs, such as car repair, utilities, etc. And the AHAB denied that application because the funding was intended to go explicitly towards housing. And so the AHAB support for the HSC has been for rental assistance. And then in addition, they funded a landlord mediation program pilot. None of those services or purposes are outlined in the AHAB goals, although not explicitly. And at one point, the AHAB had made a goal to fund long-term stabilizing solutions, which is why vouchers were included, but one-time rental assistance was not. And then an exception was made for the pandemic because there was such a need. And so those applications and funding were allowed through the pandemic. And then I guess now I'm just trying to get a sense of, is that the new normal for the AHAB? Is that now just a part of what the AHAB is considering to be a voucher? Or are we back to just considering vouchers?
Leah, Mark Bueller, what choices, if not us, who? What choices do they have?
This is Leah Roseland, Affordable Housing Administrator. I would suppose just like any other, now it's a government program. So nonprofit funding, private foundations, county funding. I suppose it could be linked to to special alcohol funds, maybe.
But there are other
Has a substantial, and so I know it would be a loss for the program if we have not funded.
How much has AHAB funded in the past for HSC?
I believe it was 550.
Was that the only round that it's done that, or has it been several years that
It was the year before, I think, and then it might have been nothing before that or very small.
Yeah. Third round.
Yeah.
The third year. Yeah. And the third year that the HSC was in existence.
So what housing impact will that have if there's $7 million less to stabilize people in their homes?
Well, fewer individuals would be unless they're able to find other sources of funding.
And this is Shannon Howery Authority. What we know for sure is even now they're having to do a lot more people than they're capable of serving, even with the funding we have. And Leah, could you, and you may not know because it's not your area, but you know, the city used to have outside agency funding, but I know there's been a lot of change in that. For them for funding or it.
This is Leah Roseland. I believe that special alcohol funds that might be they might be eligible for that. Jeff, can you think of other?
Go, Jeff.
I know off top of my head, I can't think of anything at immediacy because it usually was either special alcohol funds or through some of the various granting programs that used to be in place. And that's kind of evolved and changed over time. And just off the top of my head, I can't think of any unless Brad or Danny happen to have a memory that I don't.
Looks like Brad turned on his camera.
Yeah, hi, Brad Carr, Community Development Analyst. Were you specific to the city, or were we talking about an agency coming to the city?
Agency.
An agency.
Okay, so just one other that we do fund the HSC out of, we funded them with both CDBG CV, which were specifically COVID related funds, and they were awarded in 22 regular CDBG funds for rent and utility assistance, and they've applied for 2023 funds for rent and utility assistance also.
This is Monty Sogup Chair. I'm going to make a suggestion to keep us moving, that we add them back in to as eligible applications this year, but that we basically put them on notice that we are going to try to wean them off of this funding because our focus is going to be permanently affordable housing, and they can compete with the projects that come up against them, and we can make a decision at the time we see the applications.
Any disagreements with Monty's recommendation?
Phil Engelhardt, not a disagreement, but let's make sure that the scoring matrix reflects that, if you're going to make that change, then make sure that the scoring matrix is consistent with that.
I think the scoring matrix works pretty favorably towards permanent housing. I mean,
Yeah,
housing
it does, yeah,
structures
it does,
already.
it
So I
does.
think it would be
I
a
think that's
heavy
good.
lift as it is without stacking the deck further.
This is Nicholas Ward, Tennessee Homeowners. I just want to say, I mean, I know we've had this conversation in different ways before I was on the board, but it sounds like we hesitate and we pause a little bit because all of these valid, necessary things come before us, but then it's just whether or not that's exactly what we're doing with this funding avenue, right? So nobody should be confused that it's absolutely necessary that that's funded in some way, right? Just whether or not we're funding that through AHAB.
Correct. Right. And, Leah, maybe it's you and I don't know who it is, but we need to have a conversation with, the HSC folks and let them know this is coming so that they can be prepared next year to know that they may be off of this list. They're finding other funding sources and figuring that out.
This is Shannon Howery, Housing Authority. The other thing is, just so that we actually can see what they got in CDBG funding, and sort of how their funding is stacked, because sometimes it's hard to sort of figure out, okay, where is all the money they got from the city, or where is all the money they got from the county, so that you can have a full picture.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. So I added emergency rental assistance in. Shane, you can help remember that when we get to the budget table, whether we need to put some more specific line items in the budget. So we make sure and capture that information. That would be awesome. And to Monty's point earlier, Gabby Sprague, the HSC manager, is in the meeting. And so she's been following along this conversation, and I'm happy to speak with her offline as well and continue those discussions.
Good.
This is Dana, Family Promise of Lawrence. Just
Morning,
to
Dana.
follow up. That's okay. Follow up on a couple comments and questions that had Mark had a question and Shannon had an appropriate comment that was unrelated. So I'd like to tie those together. The needs exceed the funding for certain. There is a lottery in place. Having HSC in place does help the nonprofits that work with this demographic of people and for us families, so that if even with the limited funding now, we're still having to raise additional funds to help families that are enrolled in our program. So what happens if HSC is not funded? This is still an issue in our community. It's still a housing issue in our community, and it impacts an enormous number of people. So just wanted to make sure that was clearly stated for the record. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Erica, you had your hand up earlier, I believe.
Erica Zimmerman, Lawrence Habitat. I just had a question, and maybe this is just my not being educated completely on HSC. Is that the only entity that provides rental assistance? Does this open up for other, I'm thinking Ballard or any other organization that offers emergency rental assistance, or does it all actually go through HSC?
I can speak to that, Erica. This is Dana, Family Promise of Lawrence. Since HSC is a housing stabilization collaborative, we all came together, including Ballard, Willow, Salvation Army, Catholic Charities, Family Promise of Lawrence, Tenants to Homeowners, to collaborate on a solution that the entire community could benefit from. So the whole purpose of the HSC is that collaboration. That said, there's not enough funding as well.
Thank you, Dana. I just didn't know if we were opening it up for other organizations to come in and apply as well.
Well, this is Shannon Oury, and I think there is nothing that would keep another organization from coming in and asking.
This is Danny Walters. I could add that Catholic Charities does still apply for rapid rehousing and homeless prevention through the Emergency Solutions Grant. So they are still actively applying for funding. So.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to the next.
Okay.
item.
Thank you, Monty. Okay, so projects must meet the following definition for housing affordability. This is standard. Are there any thoughts about this? Changing our definition for housing affordability. Okay, cool. Income qualification guideline requirements. So any projects that receive trust funds are required to income qualify every household they serve. This has remained unchanged. Any comments about this section?
Leah, this is Christina Gentry. I know that we are pressed for time, but I think that we skipped a bullet unless I'm not looking at the same screen as everyone else. But the applications they're accepted for under projects that advance racial equity in housing. Am I looking at something that no one else has fixed? I think I have.
No, I got it.
Okay.
Okay.
I see that we had projects that increase community awareness and affordable housing, and then the blip was the advancing racial equity in housing. Are we skipping over that just for time, or we just all decided that was something we didn't want to further discuss?
I didn't hear any discussion about not consider. Is there discussion about not considering that as an eligible project?
Oh no, I'm just trying to make sure I'm staying up with the timeline I have, or the conversation. And so if you could you point me toward where we are right now?
What page, John?
So she was getting ready. She just finished income qualification guideline requirements.
Oh, here we are. Okay, thank you.
There you go. So we're getting ready to start source of income, and nobody had any comments on that. And then we're going to source of income. You were with us?
Nerdy now.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Lots of
All right.
pages.
Okay.
We're on 36. Okay.
I know it.
Good.
I know it. Okay, source of income, discrimination protection. So they cannot projects funded through trust funds cannot be denied because of a housing choice voucher or any other form of payment, which is now consistent with city code.
Just one, this Monty Soka. One, does third-party support include HSC in that?
That is correct.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? We're moving on. Okay, statement regarding all projects must affirmatively further fair housing and some language to describe what that means. Any comments or suggestions on this section?
This is Nicholas Ward of Tennis Homeowners. I have one quick question on the income verification component. With there being a little bit more intention to make sure that there are entities applying that aren't necessarily the not-for-profit entities, but a for-profit developer potentially bringing a project, are there resources available for them to know exactly how to do that and everything? Okay.
This is Leah Roseland, Affordable Housing Administrator. I believe that the Housing Authority partners with those developers to do income verification. Is that correct, Shannon?
We do. We provide for the entities who the city has given incentives to. If they need their income verified, we do it like for those individuals. And right now there's only one developer that uses our service, but we're happy to do it. We do it all the time.
Thank you, Shannon. Okay, are we ready to move on to evaluation criteria?
Yes.
Okay. So this outlines how, so above was just the basic, like we will only accept and score applications that are for these projects. And now this section is how we will prioritize the eligible projects, how we will decide who will get the funds. First is aligning with both AHAB and city strategic plan goals. Projects will be prioritized based on their ability to advance at least one of the following AHAB and city goals. And you can see those as follows. There was one note that I got in writing regarding inconsistencies between in the scoring matrix. We are prioritizing up to 60% AMI, but here in the goals, it goes up to 80% AMI. And so there is a little bit of inconsistency in this. And I believe that the reasoning is because for home ownership units, they go up to 80% AMI. And if we were to cut it off at 60% AMI, then we would be deprioritizing homeownership, whereas we have not been meeting our goals for homeownership units. So that's something that, according to the goals and metrics we set forth, we need to be prioritizing, incentivizing. So those are two maybe competing values. What are thoughts from the AHAB about going up to 80% AMI?
Dana Ortiz, Family Promise of Lawrence. Leah, is your question for home ownership only to allow up to 80%, but everywhere else it would be 30 to 60?
That is correct. That 30 to 60 would be prioritized in like the points and the scoring.
And of course, less than 30 as well. Okay, thank you.
This Nicholas Ward of Tenants Homeowners. I would just say right now with interest rates and how things are, it's almost absolutely necessary that it go up to 80% for people to get into new construction housing that's being offered.
This is Shannon Howery, Housing Authority. I would say that I would concur with what Nicholas said. Like, it's almost impossible for anyone not at 80 to be able to purchase a home.
All right, so I recommend this Monty Sokup, I recommend we make that change to the 80 for permanent affordable housing for sale product only and leave everything else alone
Okay.
on the rental side.
Okay.
So kind of like it is, right?
Yeah.
It is here. We need to change it in somewhere else in the
okay.
thing,
Got it.
in the matrix or somewhere else, which Leo will take care of.
Got it.
Okay. I will not read all of the AHAB goals. Are there any other comments or recommendations for changes in terms of how we've outlined the AHAB goals or the city strategic plan goals? We've only listed the most aligned strategic plan goals for the city, although there are many that intersect with housing.
So this Monty, somebody else have a comment? Sorry. I have a lot of comments today, but strategic planning goals for the city. I think we need to put a little context around these two goals because they don't mean much the way they're, to me, they don't say a lot the way they're written. So there needs to be a little more context to how those are addressed.
What's that mean?
Maybe there's something else in the strategic plan that says these are things we're going to try to monitor, address, whatever, but we need a little more language there, I think, to make that clear.
This is Leah Roseland. Yeah, and this is exactly how it is on the city strategic plan. But in my mind, that could be reconciled just by putting like SWN5, decrease the percentage of households that are experiencing housing stress. It's
Little phrase.
yeah. Okay.
Something to clarify those two things. I mean, I understand what both of those things are.
Right.
We might be able to put some of the strategy language that's also entailed in the strategic plan with it. Kind of gives a little bit more framing and
Right,
context.
just frame it. That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments about the goals language? Okay. We good to move on? Okay. So alignment with other city plans. So again, we have the strategic plan link, the consolidated plan, which is being updated, the downtown master plan and plan 2040. Then we have a strong commitment to racial equity and affirmatively furthering fair housing and outline a little bit of what that may entail. Inclusion of priority populations as outlined below.
And Leah, I was going to wait and jump in when we were talking about the matrix and the points, but I would really, I mean, I've participated in a lot of these, both with the city and the county, and every single applicant says, yes, we do that, but has no detail on how they do that. And really like to make sure that our application includes of the X number of households you currently serve or have served in the last 5 years, what percentage of them are a BIPOC community, or some sort of thing like that. Because even last year when I was trying to rate all the applications, everyone said they did it, but there was no way to distinguish between any applicant.
Yeah. And Shannon, this is Christina Gentry. I'd like to also talk about that just a little bit. This may not be the time. I know that we are having a long discussion, but as it relates to increasing racial equity in housing as our AHAB goal, I know that we had set aside for infill projects in one part of our conversations, and we had set aside earmark funds for that. I wonder, as a strategy embedded into the increasing racial equity in housing, that we look at setting aside or earmarking some funds that are projects that projects that explicitly fund local reparations, restorative housing, pilot programs. And so that could be something to talk about as we were talking about our capacity to create more people to get together as the people, the folks who have written the NOFO have been able to meet. We haven't really been able to meet and strategize what those new goals are for our AHAB goals. So maybe that looks to be like, we talk about how just like we set aside for infill projects, we can do a similar cost analysis survey where we have percentages that we also are adaptable and we account for allocated funds, which we can accommodate throughout our meetings, if that makes any sense. This could be a conversation we can have in more detail at some other point, but I wanted to kind of make that point to Shannon's that we could, people could absolutely say that this is what they do, but maybe us moving forward and making a project, a restorative housing pilot project that looks at reparations and local reparations to be something that we earmark funding for and we set aside funding for in the future.
Thank you, Christina. Are you talking about the CIP funds?
Am I talking about the CIP funds? Is that something that we earmarked for infill projects? Because what I'm thinking, I'm going back to our conversations and help me, maybe because it's been years and help me with my memory, but we had a big pie chart and we said, this is how much funding we're going to set aside for these projects. This is for infill projects. And this is how much money we're going to set aside for other projects, et cetera. So I'm thinking that maybe this is an opportunity, not right now, but as we talk about what these goals and strategies look like actionably, that's something that we could look at doing in the future for our, as we talk about what we're funding and what we're set aside funding for and what priority looks like and what racial equity looks like in action for this board.
There was a pie chart that was, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
There was a pie chart that was recommended in the housing market analysis, but the AHAB and like buckets. We've
never
had that
created
discussion
buckets.
Mm-hmm.
every year, but it's always been no buckets.
Okay.
But that doesn't disqualify. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what we might want to do, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have that discussion at all because we need to have that discussion. But what we might be able to do in this year's NOFO is in the matrix, give some higher prioritization to projects that, measurably impact racial equity and the housing piece. So to Shannon's point and Christina's points, both, we get that weighted so that the weighting shifts the funding to those kind of projects.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense. And I looked over NOFO. I think it does accurately capture some of those points.
Okay. Well, when we get to that point, let's really drill down on that.
Gotcha.
And
okay.
Got to make sure we're getting where we want to get to. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
This is Leah Roseland. And also to that point, Christina, I think when the NOFO committee was meeting about it, we discussed this goal projects that advance racial equity in housing and had some discussion about, well, what type of projects would those be? And should we outline more specifically what the AHAB might be wanting to see? And the NOFO committee decided to leave it broad to sort of see what was proposed and have the most flexibility in that. But that could be something also, I guess, to Monty's point, that if we want to add more specificity to exactly what types of projects we might want to prioritize in terms of advancing racial housing, then there's definitely room to do that.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. We'll talk, I guess, more as we go on.
Okay. Yeah, this piece is one that we know to be further operationalized. Absolutely.
So, Monty, Mark Bueller, I have a question. How does, I assume this has to do with the application. How does an applicant perform that? Show strong commitment to racial equity and affirmatively furthering fair housing. If the project they're doing, does the project itself not do that? Meaning there is housing now available that wasn't yesterday for people in a certain income category. Do the cards not read themselves, or does the applicant have to tell a better story, hire 50% minorities to do the work? I don't know how you operationalize that. Here's my overall concern with the application and even some things that are down the line. But, they start asking questions about, have you ever had a bankruptcy? Have you ever basically trouble? And if you've ever been in trouble, you're in trouble. So on one hand, we want to open the door, and on the other, and then the next time we turn around, we're slamming it. So I am really conflicted and confused about what we're trying to do. I thought what we're trying to do is let's get the most dollars in place ASAP to meet our goal for affordable housing units. That's what I thought our job was. And everything since dilutes that mission. So I'm probably confused on what we're trying to do. So that, I guess that's not a question. I asked a question. Now that's an opinion. I apologize, but somebody help me here. And I mean that.
I can hop in real quick. Nicholas Order, Tenants and Homeowners, and I was just looking through one of the documents that Leah had sent along, the gap. I think it was just titled "The Gap in Housing." And looking through that, you see that even with work that's being done to affect or solve or bring solutions to the problem of affordable housing, the percentages of who's being served and how that ends up rolling out on the end is so skewed towards communities that are basically like white communities. That's who it's benefiting. That's who needs it the least. So it's showing that way. And so this effort is just literally an equity effort to make sure that in these efforts of providing public dollars, that we're targeting communities that are not being represented historically in that. And I think so it is harder to operationalize. Let's say if you're a developer, how do you tell that story? And I think maybe that's something we talk about, or people come to us and ask for tools for if they're wondering, this is what I do. I'm not clear on the language. How do I show that I'm vested in doing this? Does that make sense?
So poor and white doesn't get it done anymore. Is that?
Well, I can't speak to that necessarily, but I'm just looking at how the representation goes, specifically in that national gap document. It shows that the percentages for, I think, I don't have that right in front of me right now.
I believe you,
but it was almost 3 times
it's astounding.
viewed in most groups where the need was expressed by BIPOC communities, almost 3 times as much. And so if we're going to get to a point to where that's equalized or made equitable, we have to put 3 times as much effort into serving communities that are identifying as BIPOC to just get it to be even.
This is Leah Roseland, and I might suggest that since we have an agenda item on this agenda looking at racial equity and disparity in housing data, that this might be a more appropriate conversation for that time.
Sure.
But also, the AHAB at the retreat voted to include racial equity as a goal. And so since that is now an AHAB goal, then that carries forward in the NOFO and in projects. Since that's a goal and a commitment that the AHAB made, then we are carrying through on that commitment by asking these types of questions.
Yeah. I add one
to ensure equitable access.
Oh, I add
Dana
one thing
Ortiz.
Oh, go ahead.
Dana
Go ahead,
Ortiz, Family Promise of Lawrence. I was wanting to speak to that very thing that Leah mentioned. We spent 4 or 5 hours in the retreat with the overriding mission and goal is to create affordable housing units for our community. Absolutely. With 7 different goals that were priority goals for our AHAB group. So the attempt here at a NOFO is to make sure all 7 of those are represented and that we're all cognizant of the fact that that is our path forward in order to help try to move the needle on affordable housing in our local community. But these were our 7 priority goals that we came away with at our meeting in, was it February? I can't recall. March, maybe. Thank you.
Thanks, Dana. And I would say yes. To directly answer your question, our number 1 goal is to create affordable housing. The second thing is to pick the best projects that we can get that deliver on the goals that we have, that we decided on. So we're not going to deliver fewer affordable houses. We're going to deliver the best products. We've never had a NOFO process where we've had more funds than we've had projects. And it becomes down to selecting the best projects that meet the most of our goals. So if we were in a situation where we were not getting projects, I would agree with you that we need to change our criteria. But at this point, we're not in that situation. So that's where I am on that.
And it's Christina, and I'll just kind of be quick about this, but making that invite and making that clear and making the clarity, we are absolutely inviting those kind of projects. And so make the invite to be something that is inclusive in our structure already will maybe hopefully get those projects to come to us. I think it's important to make that to be part of our language so that inclusion is part of the process as well as we looking at other entities and organizations that may not have stepped into the arena of AHAB applicants.
Good. Okay. Let's go on. Let's go to the next item.
Okay. The second one is related to inclusion of priority populations. And just a reminder that these are included as priority populations for not just the AHAB, but also in the Housing and Homelessness Community Strategic Plan, because these are populations that experience great disparities in housing access in our community. The next one is neighborhood engagement and community outreach. Just stop me if you have comments. Otherwise,
I'm just going to say, I'm curious to see what we will, this Monte Soka, what we will get back on this and how our development community will respond to this. So this is not probably their strong suit. So it'll be interesting to see what we get here.
The next one is developer or organizational capacity. And we have a list of items that we're going to be looking at in terms of how to measure or evaluate their capacity to do the project and manage the funds. Any questions or comments about that one? Okay, and then the last one, AMI serves. So projects that primarily serve residents at lower 30 to 60 will be prioritized over those serving 60 to 80. Given our conversation earlier, do we need to be more explicit, for instance, in saying except for home ownership units, or do you all think that this is okay as it stands?
I think some clarification would be helpful, Leah, so we're not appearing to be inconsistent within our own document.
And I think you want that to read 30 to 60 instead of 30 to 50. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's.
Got an older
Yeah, it's 30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, what about the 55?
So do you all think that just by putting it, except for homeownership units adds enough clarity? Or does somebody else have another recommendation?
If you want to clarify that there, you can, I think. Did it hurt?
Yeah, because the way I read this Monte Soka, the way I'd read that right now is you're like prioritizing the lower income over permanent affordable housing, which is the only thing in that 80%, which I don't think is our intent. So maybe some clarification on
so do you have a suggestion?
well, maybe it says, maybe it's non-ownership projects that primarily serve resident, we prioritize. So we say non-ownership, and that takes us out of that ownership thing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And you haven't talked about them together.
Someone reading this for the first time is going to find an inconsistency in those percentages and start asking questions. So anything you can do to clarify it is a good thing.
So can somebody just whatever. I'm not arguing that. Just what language
Yeah, I
do
would
we want to
say
use?
non-ownership projects that primarily serve residents at lower AMI will be prioritized over those serving non-ownership projects serving over.
Ownership.
It'd be non-owners rental.
Well, there's
You can say
5 other goals. So it could be vouchers. It could
somehow
be.
you got to exclude the home ownership piece.
Yeah.
that's all you need to do there, I think.
That Leah could craft something if
Yeah.
we don't bug her.
Yeah.
All right, we good to move on?
Sure.
Okay.
I need to wordsmith that a little bit, but you got the point, I think.
Okay, so now we're getting into these prioritization categories above were for any types of applications, any types of projects. Now we're getting into prioritizing specifically for the new development projects. So expanding affordable housing to all Lawrence neighborhoods so that we're not concentrating poverty. Affordability remains in perpetuity so that we're not losing our valuable affordable housing stock. And a sustainability commitment, which is in alignment with the city strategic plan. Any comments or suggestions for changes on those three? Okay. Community needs, or projects that respond to community need based on the housing market analysis. And then just have a list here. In addition, these following factors will be used to further prioritize development projects. Any comments or suggestions?
These are all as important as each other. Is that right? There's no 1, 2. Right? Okay. Then I'm good with all of it.
The weighted scoring.
We good to move on? Okay. Now we'll look at the matrix. So we have two different matrices, one for acquisition and development. The other one is for social services, housing support services and rehabs. So number one, goal alignment. So we have 7 AHAB goals. If they meet one goal, they will get 10 points. If they meet 2 or more goals, they will get 15 points as outlined. Any discussion on that item?
Mark Bueller, is this how you've done it in the past? This percentage of right answers?
No, the matrix, this scoring is new. In the past, it's been if it's a goal, then they get all, if they meet a goal, then they get all the points. In this one, it's saying if they meet multiple goals, then they'll get sort of bonus points.
So we just pick that to trying to, you could cut this up 100 ways. I don't want to do that.
So what we had, our previous matrix only had about, 8 line items. And it was extremely subjective.
Right.
As to, rank 1 to 10, how you felt like the proposal was. So what we tried to do, and we had wide variety of opinions on any given thing. So it was fairly inconsistent. And I don't think most of us didn't find it all that helpful, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe even confusing. So we tried to revamp the small committee, sat down and we tried to revamp this so that it was a little more, a little bit less interpretation, a little bit less opinion, but still leave a little room, to add some value in different places. But if you meet one goal, you get this, you meet more than that, you get Y, so that we have some consistency, so that really the projects, filling out the matrix actually provides us a kind of apples to apples comparison of projects and maybe starts to rank better projects over less good projects.
So in the past, if it was 15 points, you could have given it 6 and I could have given it 14.
Right.
Kind of, there it is.
There it is.
Okay. So, okay.
Yeah. So we tried to remove a little bit of subjectivity, but obviously there's some things that are just subjective and we couldn't do it.
Well,
and that's where you, as a board member, you have to weigh in and do your work.
And we won't criticize this matrix until we do it and don't like what we do.
Right. And then you can beat us up all you want.
No, you have to have some structure and you're providing it and I appreciate it.
So the AMI served category, is that the one that will be reworked to match the language difference between rentals and homeownership?
Do you mind if we discuss that when we get there?
Oh.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that we're having discussion on all the items. So we don't skip anything. We will look at though. Thank you. Okay, so any changes in with goal alignment?
I don't want this, Phil Engelhardt, I don't want a long discussion here, but did you all think about maybe having, a more 10 points, 15 points, having 3 or more goals being 15, 2 or more being 10, 1 being 5. I don't want to get off track too far, but if you already had that discussion, then just tell me and I'll shut up. So.
Yes, we did have that.
Okay.
discussion. We struggled mightily with this.
Like an hour.
So we're not married to this.
No, that's fine.
We're happy to.
You did the work.
We did have those kind of conversations on literally every one of these, but we're not perfect. This is just 4 people's idea, right?
I just wanted to be, like you said, you just want to be able to rationally differentiate the best project.
Right.
And I thought if you had 3 or more goals, that would give you a little bit more rationale to get the best project, but whatever.
I had Mark
Chair?
Bueller, I had a question on leverage. So I don't know what.
Let's go through these. We'll hit each one.
Fair enough.
Right, Leah?
Yes, please. That would be incredibly helpful.
You're jumping ahead.
Let's resolve this first one. And it looked like Sarah had a comment.
This is Sarah Waters. I was just going to speak quickly to Phil's question. It's highly unusual, actually, that a project might have 3. So because a project more has a focus. So that's but we thought there is possibility, especially with a couple of our new goals, or the rehabilitation plus maybe some permanent housing. So we did talk about that, but hitting 2 goals is actually pretty significant for a project and not just be in the bucket 01 based on how our goals are written.
Okay. I'm good with that.
We good to move on to the next one, or would folks like changes on this? Okay. All right. Racial equity and inclusion. So this one, so just baseline, like you're not discriminating, is following fair housing practices, affirmatively furthering fair housing practices would get 10 points. And we had discussion around how we would operationalize that. The state recently decided that state funding that race and other identity criteria cannot be used as a factor when allocating funding. And so, like we had discussed, looking at racial makeup of boards, and don't believe that we can include that as a criteria. And affirmatively fair housing, those practices are generally looked at on a level of a community level or for like public housing authorities. And so trying to operationalize how a developer specifically would affirmatively further fair housing remains to be something that we need to further define. So thoughts or suggestions for now?
So this is Shannon Oury with the Housing Authority. Yeah, I mean, some of it is almost the only thing about furthering fair housing is you have to have that equal housing logo on all of your published materials. And it's gotten, I mean, it used to be that we would try to figure out ways to reach out to publications or different things that would reach a BIPOC community, or, you know, if I mean, we have to have a document that talks about this, but it's very difficult in Lawrence because it's very difficult to find mechanisms to publish things like, hey, we're taking applications and we would love to receive your application. And so I don't really know how we measure this. I mean, it's, it's hard for us, and we have some real specific things that we're allowed to do that I don't think a regular developer puts in their normal work plan.
This is Leah Roseland. So this may be one that remains more subjective, and we rely on the applicant narrative to this question to evaluate as we further define, unless any members have any other recommendations at this time.
I would say that is in as much as the group has come together with their capacity to look at the strategies and the goals for each of our other strategies and goals, that we form a smaller group to do that work too. And I know that we talked about that last meeting, but I think it's important to kind of weigh in on and really drive a lens onto something that is subjective and kind of continue to move in that direction of adding or understanding what the affirmatively furthering fair housing looks like for Lawrence.
Yeah.
Dana Ortiz, Family Promise. I'm not a lawyer. I concur. We need to try to figure out this with the complexity that of the state requirements. But I also think it serves a purpose just to keep it in that way, because it's showing, it's aligning with our goals, and it's letting the applicant tell the story and even think about the story. If I just say this project follows affirmative fair housing practices, that's 5 points. How else are you furthering the story? Tell that. Think creatively about that. I don't have a problem with this. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but putting that in there and showing that we're wanting to hear this, that this is a priority for us, without too much guidelines, I don't have a problem with that so far. But I also haven't studied what the state says, so.
I'm comfortable with it as it stands now, and we can certainly see how well it works and try again next year.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. But the Phil Engelhardt, but the consensus basically is that it's up to the applicant's narrative, and it will be judged on that basis by the people who are, AHAB. That's the perspective.
Bill,
Yeah, I would
Dana,
agree with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Dana Ortiz at Family Promise again. Based on our last evaluation, which I don't believe you were part of that in November. I can't remember when you. So as Shannon alluded earlier in our conversation here, very few of the projects said anything besides that boilerplate statement.
Right.
And a few did say, here's who we're serving, here's why we're, just a little bit of extra. So I think if we educate ourselves of looking beyond that boilerplate, little placeholder, yes, we follow fair housing practices,
Right,
and look for something extra, we can kind of take some of that subjectivity out within ourselves as a body.
Yep. I'm good with that.
Monty Sokup Chair, we said our group struggled with this and trying to figure out how to quantify this. I like the way it is right now. I would certainly welcome the opportunity to have another smaller group further this forward and see if we come up with something else, or come up with more, criteria that would help us, I hate to say put it in a box, but get our hands around, what it means to affirmatively further fair housing above and beyond the minimum standards. So if we want to form a small group to work on that, I'm not, but I think for this, I don't think we have time to do that to impact this NOVO. And we'll also have the benefit of seeing what we get back in this round of proposals with that. And one last thing on this, I think, again, I go back to this goal alignment. If I'm building affordable for sale homes and I can show that I am going to lease them to the BIPOC community or sell them to the BIPOC community or reach out to that community, I get that extra 5 points there as well. There aren't too many of those projects that are going to impact multiple goals, except for the last two. They're going to build something And then if they can have a racial impact or they can have promote affordable housing, that's the opportunity really to get the second 5 points.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think and we put this together, I think we were trying to encourage the development community to reach for those 6 and 7.
Okay.
I think that we had a good example in one. I want to say it's our last go round of applicants, and embedded was a sheet that came and as instruction of how the interaction and the conversation with those non-English speaking residents. And so that was part of the applications or applicants, and that was an added extra. And I thought that would be a great example of how that work was done. I can't remember who, and I don't remember, I think it's Mario Ferro and some others who created that. And I don't want to misname anyone because it was a little while ago, but that was a great example of that work that's already been done. And if we can use that as a platform and go from there, I think applications going forward could include some of that language as well. So I'll look back into the last applicant go around and like maybe pinpoint what that looked like if anyone doesn't remember, but that was a great example of adding to an application and padding, getting the extra points.
We also talked about getting some suggestions from the homeless and housing stakeholders group with that plan because they have a equity small group that's diving into this quite a bit. So we did talk about getting some suggestions from them and their help because they've been working on it for months. So.
This is Leah Roslin, Affordable Housing Administrator. So it doesn't look like we're going to get to maybe any other agenda items today, but an agenda item today was to go over the racial disparity in housing data, which will be one step forward in helping to educate and inform the AHAB on just what the problems are that we're trying to resolve. And then that priority focus area group, the equity and inclusion group, is presenting to the AHAB next month, the plan and making some recommendations on strategies that the AHAB might want to align with as well. So again, probably won't make it in time for the NOFO, but at least will help to educate the AHAB and being able to more thoroughly evaluate that. So yes, absolutely, Dan. That is on the horizon. Okay. Unless there's any other discussion, are we good to move on? Okay, so try to get this in a couple ways. So we have the racial equity and inclusion specific category, and then we have a second category regarding population served, where it's you get 5 points for every population served, with BIPOC being one of them. And again, these are populations that experience severe housing disparities in our community, which is why they're specifically being prioritized, or an old language would be targeted. We don't want to target anybody. And so to Shannon's point earlier, I think important to, really more than just checking a box that they'll be served, but to get these points outlined specifically how these populations are being outreached to in some way or assisted specifically in some way. Any questions or discussion items about that?
This is Phil Engelhardt. Was any consideration given to formerly incarcerated individuals when you did the population served business?
This is Leah Roslin, Affordable Housing Administrator. That is a population that's included in the Housing and Homelessness Plan that is not included here. And so if the AHAB would like to include that as well, we can add that category. Because that community experiences huge barrier and discrimination, and it's very difficult. Is that something? Oh, sorry.
Mark Bueller, I need to know more about that. If someone I need to understand that better. I'm learning. But formerly incarcerated doesn't necessarily mean we're all good now. To me. Maybe it does or it should, but it, anyway, it's a comment on that.
This is Leah Roseland. Is there interest among the AHAB to add that as a category, or is the AHAB good with sticking with the 4 populations as outlined?
This is Nicholas Ward of Tenants to Homeowners. I was going to say the county offered a really great reentry kind of training program to see what the experience is like coming out of incarceration and how absolutely difficult it was to obtain housing. There's, I mean, getting an ID, some of the folks have already been in this, but it almost through that simulated reentry, what you understand is the kind of easiest option functionally for like how you spend your time and effort is just to get reincarcerated again, because that's what you experience when you're in that training. That's what I experienced anyways, because it's just a really big hassle. And so I see that, especially with the Artists Helping the Homeless program and other efforts where the county's helping fund through different housing initiatives, that this is a focus that we're having. I don't know what the percentage is, but also when you're speaking about houselessness, I'm sure that there's my intuition tells me that there's a percentage of people there that would fit into that from just the complications of not having a place to be all the time, that you open yourself up to issues with law enforcement. And I think it's my personal opinion is that it's something worth including.
I would agree.
Thank you, Nicholas, Karen. This is Monty Sogub, Chair. I also think we should add it. I think are trying to get those points. You probably know what you're getting into, and you have probably set up the wraparound services to try to deal with that population. So it's not our choice. We're not forcing anybody to do it, but if they're doing it, we're giving them a bonus and we're adding value. So I think it's okay to add it. And it also aligns with what's in the houselessness initiative. So I think aligning with that's also a good thing. We're not making anyone do that.
Dana RT's Family Promise of Lawrence, I concur with adding this extra spotlight point in there for population served.
Any disagreement? So I'm sorry, this is Leah Roseland. I'm just trying to figure out then how that would impact our points. Just like a real technical issue of.
Go to 4.
They all go to 4.
They all go to 4.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure we'll have an applicant that can serve all of those populations.
Right.
So I don't know that 20 is the max number. The max number is probably something more like 10. Like if you can hit 2 of those categories, great. But I don't think you're going to get single family or single parent homes and seniors and incarcerated.
Right. You're not going to get all that.
All of those in the same project.
Right.
Okay. Thank you
Right. I'm
for
going
that
to
discussion.
pause this right here for a minute, Leah.
Yeah.
If we look at the rest of the agenda, are there other things that we cannot table or that we want to get to today? Do we want to, I mean, where's our priority, to get through this document, or do
We have to get, sorry. I'm like,
I'm asking. Right? So,
this is Leah Rosen. If we don't get, we won't have time to, unless we want to revise the timeline and get the NOFO out late, then we have to come to all decisions today so it can be approved next month. The only other item that's time sensitive and that could still be deferred to next month is scheduling the special meeting in October. Otherwise, everything else is important, but not time. It's critical in terms of timing.
okay.
You need a motion.
So, yeah. So if it's okay, let's just just to take this off the plate. We're not doing it at the end. Let's have a motion. I'd be entertaining a motion to take, was that 3, 4, and 5? And table those. I imagine items 3, 4, and 5. That'd be receive the housing strategic plan, homelessness strategic plan, staff updates on the housing stress map.
I'm Mark Bueller. I would make that motion, subject to anybody that might be wanting to make a public comment on those items, if they're out there somewhere. Do we have anybody out there? Seeing none.
Yeah, see.
I'd make that motion.
I believe we may have someone that wants to give public comment on the item we're on. But before we would table number 3, the housing and homelessness plan draft, just to make note that that is out in the public right now, and then we'll come to the city and county at some future date that may be before we meet again. I'm not sure. And so May 18th is the next and final public meeting about that plan. So I think it would be important for AHAB to have some eyes and ears on that plan before it's adopted by the city and county.
Yeah.
And Jeff might be able to find when that might be, but I have not seen it on an agenda yet. I don't know what the timeline is.
This is Leah Rosen, Affordable Housing Administrator. We'll be presenting that to the City Commission in early July after the county, just because the last week of July and the first week of July City Commission meetings are canceled, or July 4th is canceled. The last one is just not a meeting. The AHAB, the intent was only to present the affordable housing and racial equity sections of that plan. There are ongoing community forums for the AHAB to give feedback on that. I know 3 members were at the one last week, and I'm so appreciative of those who attended. There's one more scheduled, and would really encourage the AHAB to attend that last one. I sent those dates out in an email, and when that last one comes up, I'll send an email again reminding you. But that's a great place to give any feedback as well.
The May 18th will be at 5:30 at the library.
Good.
Might be at 6:30. I think I put this in my.
What is it? Because I need to tell somebody. 6:30?
Let me double check
That's okay.
because I think I put that in a different time zone.
Before you
Send an email.
before you all finish the motion to dismiss these items, is the housing stress map link going to work? Was that what?
It should work now. We had a little bit of some gremlin in the system this morning that kicked it out, so it should be okay now. And I will just preface that is a draft, so it may intermittently have some issues. We haven't quite ironed them all out yet.
Okay.
And I have the housing and homelessness plan at 5:30, May 18th at the library. And I Mark's motion.
All right, so but we have a motion and a second to move items 2, 3, 4, or 3, 4, and 5 to table them to the next meeting at this point. Any discussion on that?
This is Sarah Byers. I would request we go ahead and also just include, because we have multiple members not here today, and I don't think we're going to come up with that special meeting, and then we just go ahead and do that next month as well. So add item 2.
All right,
motion.
Mark. Sure. Friendly modification to your motion?
With pleasure.
The second accept?
Second.
Okay. All right. So removing or tabling items 2, 3, 4, and 5. Any other comments? I'll call a roll. Karen?
Yes.
Christina?
Yes.
Erica?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Nicholas?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mark?
Yes.
Monty? Soka? Yes. Motion passes 10-0. So we will get back to, thank you, everybody. We'll get back to the matrix. Back to you, Leah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
Thank you for being proactive in that. Okay, this is Leah Roseland. And so moving on to AMI served. this, yeah, a discussion or recommendations for changes. Right now, it's basically prioritized based on the number of units that will serve the 30 to 60% AMI. Okay.
Real quick, this is Nicholas Ward, tenants to homeowners. I think this is how it's been in the past, right? That component of it, or no?
This is new.
This is new. Okay. I mean,
Nicholas is Monty, so we've always looked at that, but we haven't quantified how we assess the points. We've always given a higher priority to high percentages, but we've never said 5% for this, 10 for that, whatever. So that's all we try to do is put brackets around.
I think we've probably given Leah enough guidance to kind of reframe that. Like for 15 points, it's 30 to 60 AMI for rentals, 60 to 80% for homeownership, and just kind of have those things be parallel.
Yeah.
Did you get that, Leah?
With all of it for her.
Right.
Yeah, it looks like. Dana, did you want to?
Just to ask, to clarify on Nicholas's question about it being in there before, the attempt here is to try to take out some of the subjectivity between AHAB reviewers as we go on, give it a little more quantifiable results and guidance. So that's why it's broken out in this manner.
okay. I guess Nicholas Ward again, tenants to homeowners. My suggestion would just be that same piece of conversation that we had before, is those identifications for what's rental, what's homeownership when looking at the percentages of AMI. So nothing different from that, what we talked about before.
This is Phil Engelhardt following up on Nicholas. But with respect to the scoring matrix, I mean, I very much agree with the 61 to 80% for home ownership. But then how is it going to fit points wise into this matrix? I mean, you've got that in hand. I'm not sure I do. So
when you approve it, you don't know what you're going to get at the end. Is that what you're saying?
well, I'm saying the way that the matrix is set up right now, that the connection with higher AMI going up to nearly 80%, there's no place in here to get points, is there? Or am I missing something?
This is Leah Roseland. I believe that somebody had made a recommendation to add another category to the matrix for homeownership.
Okay.
So to specify for rentals, these are the points value, and then perhaps I'll still put it in this table, but specify rentals, home ownership, and have that go up to 80% AMI.
This, Nicholas Ward again, tenants homeowners. You'll once in a while we'll come into projects where someone's doing both homeownership and rental. So I just wanted to bring that up for the matrix if that messes with point structures at all. I don't know if it matters at the end what the maximum total is for that exceeding something, but if some developments there will be both and might meet both of those to the maximum. Great, right?
This is Leah Roseland. So I'm wondering if we need to change it, because eligible projects, according to project eligibility, the AHAB is not considered of 80% AMI. So is there a need to add up to 80% AMI, or do we still actually want to be prioritizing the lower AMI?
I think it was for home ownership, the lowest AMI or the highest AMI that is reasonable for this would be the 60 to 80%. We didn't want to deprioritize home ownership by not having a category that captures the good that is done with that. And I think it should probably be equal to rentals that are between 30 and 60 AMI.
So Leah, just trying to wordsmith this out a little bit. Sorry. If we just took the first line and said less than 25% of units will be affordable rental 30 to 60 or affordable for sale 60 to 80, 0 points. That would give you either or, and you get the same 15 points awarded, whether you're doing rental or.
But if you were just doing an infill of 1 or 2 units,
Right.
then
still 100% affordable.
Right.
Right.
One way or another.
One way or another, it's 100%. Or if it's 50% if you're doing 2 units and one's affordable.
More than 70. So let's see. Okay.
I think that gets
As
it.
long as you capture the general
I
intent.
think it captures whether you're for sale
Okay.
at 1% or rental
Okay.
at another percentage, you're eligible for the 5 points up to 15.
I'm good.
Right. Okay. Everybody good with that?
With how this is being modified? Or affordable home ownership 30 to 80%? Okay,
So you have to do that for all 4 lines. but
yes,
Let's go
we do.
on.
Thank you, Leah.
I'm going to wait and do that. Okay, neighborhood and community engagement. And so project timeline includes plans for community and neighborhood engagement, providing meaningful opportunities for community feedback. No community engagement, 0 points. The focus is to inform, meaning all the decisions have been made, 5 points. And the focus is on consulting or involving the community is the maximum 10 points. And again, we're relying on the applicant narrative here.
Okay.
Or if they want to submit a community engagement plan for those that have them, that would be amazing as well.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, like Monty said, I'm really excited to see what the neighborhood engagement looks like.
yeah.
Me too.
Okay. Financial information. So again, it's one of those 5 points for each. Complete budget, positive operational cash flow, and positive net worth would all get you 5 points.
So I write a lot of grants and even for housing organizations, nonprofits. I don't know why we would accept something that didn't give a complete and accurate budget would be the first thing. So that would be like, if you didn't do it, then don't bother with the rest of the application. And the positive operational cash flow for housing organizations in particular, there's a wide swing because of when funding comes in and when projects get accomplished. That without that lens, that makes that harder to interpret. And the positive net worth, I think there's also just a fluctuation depending on the timing of projects. So the financial information needs to be, and we need to be able to say, yes, this is a financially viable project. But these particular metrics might not be quite the right ones.
Mark Buer, so let me ask you a question. You're the expert. Well, you know more than I do. If you had a project in front of you that had that, but there were some negative cash flows in the interim, but you understood it and you felt it was a good project.
A good application will give you a chance to explain that.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I don't think we specifically have that listed in here, but
Okay.
having a place where they can explain any.
We still count on the applicant to inform us and educate us. Okay. Great.
It's better if we also ask.
Yeah.
They have it, so they know that they can tell us that.
This is Leah Roseland. One other thing to consider is, and this doesn't negate anything that you said, but this is the matrix for development specifically. And we actually borrowed this from peer cities, matrices that we had looked at, that it's consistent with how several other trust funds rank and evaluate financial information. We struggle quite a bit with what do we want to see, what would really help us evaluate that. And so if members think that this misses the mark, maybe some recommendations on what a better alternative would be really helpful. This is one that was discussed quite a bit, actually.
Yes, I would ask some of our nonprofit development partners that are here how they like to be asked those questions and how they like to have a chance to explain where their how their finances are strong.
Erica Zimmerman, Lawrence Habitat. I think Commissioner Willie, you hit it on the head. Give us an opportunity to explain if that's something opposite of what you're asking for or opposite of what you're seeing. Our financials are sometimes difficult to read because of timing and because of all of the different projects going on, but just an opportunity to explain if something might look off or adverse, I think is good for us and how it's generally asked of us.
I think if we have a question where we ask specifically, is there anything about your finances you'd like to explain or something like that? And then change it from, instead of a positive operational cash flow, a healthy operational cash flow, so that we can, if we know why it's happening this way, we can say, yes, that is healthy, even though it is negative this year, but it's positive last year and so on.
Sounds good to me.
This is Leah Roseland. Okay, so there are a couple points. One, in terms of the option to outline comment on the budget. Is this question sufficient for that? Or is there interest in adding another question specifically around cash flow? Or
Is it just say operational budget narratives? It's just wide open?
that's correct, does it? Yeah.
Nicholas, Board of Tenants and Homeowners, you could add in something that specifically addresses those things that are mentioned above. So if not showing a positive this, if not, and then it's kind of a prompt for people to know that it would be appreciated to have some follow-up and explanation specifically to address those.
Yeah, Monty, so good. Jared, we did struggle with this because we're also thinking about for-profit entities and how they report. You know, you can't really, somebody's not going to give you, on a private side, not give you their financial statement. You know, they're just not going to provide it because it's not public information. So we kind of struggled with how to do this. So I'm not saying we got it right by any means, but I don't know, we're going to solve it here.
Can we implement a nonprofit bias with that?
Right.
Done.
Right. It's difficult to get both. So we talked about whether, you know, a statement from audit, you know, we asked for an audited, you know, a letter from your auditor that says you've been audited in the last couple of years and that there are no exceptions to those audits, you know, because that would get you, if there's an issue, if there's a real issue, an exception to the audit that be reported, then you learn something without seeing the actual documents and what the issue is. So I don't know what the right answer is. We're trying to balance, certainly walk a line.
Yeah, Mark Bueller, when you get to that, that's going to be a problem. There's a whole bunch of developers, business people that don't have and can't afford an audit. So, yeah, at some point you have to trust somebody.
But Phil Engelhardt, going back to what Karen said, I mean, I think that, I know it's an ambiguous term, but I think the notion of just adding in healthy in that language, you know, will help to get around the cash flow business, you know, that plagues not-for-profits and small businesses. You know, it may not look good right now, but hey, last year was real good. You know, I mean, I think that still leaves room for Ahab to evaluate the nature of the finances.
And a private developer would have the same kind of boom and bust based on timing and income.
Right.
Yeah.
This is Leah Roseland. Any disagreement to changing positive to healthy and adding that additional question on the application?
It's great.
Please do.
That sounds reasonable to me.
All right, we good to move on?
A healthy network doesn't work for me.
You know,
maybe just say statement of net worth and we can evaluate if they provide it.
I think it's probably okay how it is.
Or positive net worth.
Leave it to positive.
You got cash in the bank or you have assets. There's something there.
What's our history with the private side? Do we have any?
Yeah.
What have they given us in the past?
I don't recall what the Krisnick projects provided, but
They're pro formas.
Pro formas, they provided, this is Shannon now with the housing, they provided pro formas, and they were also preparing documents for KHRC for low income housing tax credits. And quite frankly, I think we just asked for like if you're getting low income housing tax credits, provide us that documentation. Because we're usually being asked to make up a funding shortfall for those projects. And so I think, I mean, they're already giving it to a public agency. I don't see why they can't give it to us.
This is Leah Roseland. That actually is on the application as one of the attachments if they're applying for LIHTC to include those documents.
And I wonder if back on the other part where you're asking positive net worth, that viability and how they're going to put it together. Because I mean, like, I can think of some of the tenants to homeowners programs where they were layering funding, and it only worked if they got us and KHRC's housing trust and that kind of thing. And I don't want to exclude those projects. It's still leveraging, it's just a, sort of a different way. And so I mean,
okay, so
It's in the budget.
this is Leah Roseland. So it looks like, Shannon, you're talking about the leverage one category.
Well,
is that correct?
No, I'm talking about the financial information, because sometimes the way, I mean, I think you put in there like positive net worth is I'll just give you an example. Housing Authority. There's my annual budget, which is about somewhere between 10 and 11 million, but I can't spend all that money except the way HUD gave me the funds to do so. And then if you valued the property that we own, it's like we're in the, $25 million, but I can't use any of those properties because they're public housing properties. And so when you're saying, what's your net worth? One, you need to know, is it the entity or is it the individual or is it the agency? Right? It's not a real good sort of measure. And so I think if we kind of make it more towards the project viability, like, what is your plan to make sure you have enough money to do this project? It might be a little bit, we might get better information. I don't know, but.
So what would be your recommendation for evaluating that? Because right now we're just looking at like how many points and like what is the criteria for evaluating what you just described?
Are we looking at what's the percentage of the total project that's being asked for? Like, do they have 80% of the funding from other sources and they're braiding in just this 20%?
That's leverage.
Okay, and never mind.
So Shannon, this is Nicholas with Tennis Homeowners. Are you asking for something more than the project budget? Like you're asking, yes, I want to see the project budget, but then I also want a way to assess the project budget.
Well, yeah, I mean, kind of in that, but because Nicholas, how would you describe your net worth? I mean, that's a private that's a kind of a different thing than whether you can. So do you want to say more of do you have reserve funds that could be utilized to support this? There's a whole bunch of different sort of things. Or you could ask, have you received approval for a loan on this project? I mean, there's a lot of pieces of information that we could be getting. I just don't know when we say, do you have a positive net worth?
This is Leah. That's not actually a question on the application. So that would be supplemental materials. On the application, there are questions about like asking additional questions about their budget. It sounds to me, just in the interest of time, we have 15 minutes left. Does the AHAB just want to remove the positive net worth? I haven't heard recommendations for alternatives.
I'll give you
for like a point.
This is Karen Willie. I propose that we strike positive net worth and put up project financial viability.
Well said.
Any disagreements with changing positive net worth to project via, what did you say?
Project financial viability.
Project financial viability. Any disagreements?
No, I agree with that.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I get that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you all. Any other discussion on that item? Okay, then the leverage. Oh, yeah.
I have a question about leverage. Leverage sounds awesome. And now that I look at this matrix, 200 points available, it's a generic question. I'm not trying to blow up the process, but leverage, which to me is really important because that means more units, somebody else's money, is worth, if you're the best there is, it's worth 5%. As I actually look at all of them, there's so many to critique that it's kind of hard to win on any of them. So I'm going to support this, but we have 16 criteria, no, 19. And that means it's about 5% on everything. And that means it feels really, really watered down. The whole thing, but I haven't been through a funding experience either. So I'm going to hide and watch, but I thought leverage would have more leverage. That's it. Done.
Yeah, this is Shannon Howery. I agree with that. And I mean, I kind of think, why wouldn't we? I mean, financial information is 15 and leverage is 10. I mean, to me, leverage is one of the most important things also. I think they go together, but.
So this small soak up, I'm gonna make a suggestion that we take out positive operational cash flow on financial information and make that worth 10 points and at least add those 5 to leverage. If we don't find another 5 somewhere else, maybe. And just change those numbers so we can shift a little more towards leverage. I think we're going to get, if we get a complete and accurate budget and we know that the project viability is good, I think we know what we need to know on financial information for the project. Maybe we can just shift that around a little bit.
I like that.
Agree.
Any disagreement?
I'm going to make one more. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
Dan.
go ahead, Monty. Finish your thoughts.
I was just thinking we could find another 5 points somewhere to pump that up to 20, but I don't know where that is yet. I can't. Maybe we can find it along the way somewhere.
Distance to amenities.
Yeah, I don't like. Yeah, the big one.
That's.
Is that the
huge,
next
and
page?
We're not a really very big community. I think you can
Okay.
pull some significant points out of that.
Yeah.
Here's my question. If we could go back up a little bit, Leah, I really hear what Mark's saying with the number of qualifiers we've got here. We're really watering down what we wanted to do with importance. Can we include to me, when I review this, leverage is part of the words that we landed on from Karen, project financial viability. Is there a way to include financial information and project leverage as one unit in this metrics and have it be worth 25, be a larger amount rather than these little bits? And in the same manner, kind of looking back and seeing what else we might be able to combine. Anyway, just certainly I think that leverage is part of project financial viability, and we probably in the budget see that already anyway, so why measure those as separate?
This is Leah Roseland. So the way that the scoring rubric has worked in the past under financial information is basically, do you have a complete budget and does it balance? If yes, you get the points. We could do that here. Like you suggested, Dana, reduce financial information to 5 points, take out project financial viability, and just have it be, do you have a complete or accurate budget? I would say we need to have some scoring or evaluation criteria based on the budget and not eliminate it completely, but that seems like it might be an easy solution.
Well, I'm with Karen when she said 10 or 15 minutes ago, if you don't have a budget in there, you don't have an application. I mean, that is just one of the most minimal things.
This is Leah Roseland. The budgets are typically filled out, but that doesn't mean that they're always complete or accurate. So
Okay.
that's what we're asking.
Okay, thank you.
This is a little higher level question that I know we can't tackle today, but moving into, instead of a paper form, into a portal form, it saves a lot of staff time because you don't have to evaluate whether it's complete or not. They can't submit it until it's a complete application. And so some of these things would already be known. They'd have to check that box to move forward and so on. I think that might be what for next year, if there's the ability to move to, there's some really standard portals out there that we could kind of glom onto and put our information. It would simplify it for the applicant. It would simplify it for us.
This is Leah Roseland. It's been my soapbox that we need a grant management software since I've gotten here. And that is a part of the 2024 budget request. So fingers crossed. Agreed.
Leah, I'll help.
So in resolving this though, I'm not sure I heard, what was arrived at? Are we taking this to 5 points?
I thought, Mark Bueller, I thought we were considering adopting Monty's idea of 10 and 15, switching those around.
That's done.
Oh.
But then there was a further comment to increase leverage more and about combining financial information and leverage. And so my suggestion was to leave 5 points just for a complete or accurate budget. It's going to be filled out, but does it balance? Is it complete? If yes, they get 5 points. If no, it's 0 points, and adding those additional 5 points into the leverage score to have it equal 20.
This is Monty Soak up. I'm going to make one more recommendation. I'm going to say we move leverage to 20. And I'm going to suggest we take 5 points out of distance to amenities and just make the math work.
Oh, and leave financial at 10.
Leave financial at 10. And maybe this becomes whatever this is, 3 points, 3 points, 3 points, whatever it has to become to make that work. To a whole number.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
I got it.
maybe we have to adjust somewhere else, but I just think we can take those distances. I mean, that's important, but it's not on the level of leverage, and we make that work. Any other?
Yeah, I agree.
Any disagreements? Oh, I'm sorry.
Once we use the scoring matrix, are we required to, projects that score higher, we
No.
have to fund over projects we don't? Okay, because
No, it's a guide once we have it filled out. It's partly a tool to make sure we all look at the same things in the application. So when we have a discussion at the table, we've all seen it. And we have some guidance. I mean, some projects ought to stand out. Some ought to fall out the bottom. So.
Nicholas Order, tennis homeowners. It might also be easier to just reduce financial information to 5 points, because that's kind of a yes or no thing almost, that you have it or you don't have it. And then that creates that space without having to mess with the other category of proximity or location to amenities.
So there have been a couple suggestions in terms of getting the leverage to 20. One is to reduce financial information to 5 points, have that be basically yes or no, they do it or they don't. The other suggestion was to take it out of location to amenities and make that worth fewer points.
I just envision being able to put in a really great application with no budget and no financial viability and scoring really high. So I think we have to be able to evaluate it on the finances, because money is what we're here about. I mean, the rest of the project, the money is our tool. So
Yep. I guess Nicholas,
not enough as opposed to too much.
Nicholas Ward, tennis homeowners, I was thinking that more of like a logic based thing where it's like, if you don't include that, like it's not a viable application. But you still get 5 points if you include it, but or some, But I don't either way, I think just one more option.
This Phil. Oh, I'm sorry.
I would be,
Sorry.
Dana Ortiz with Family Promise, from that perspective, the distance to amenities is so critical to the success of families staying housed that I would really like to see that stay in there. Working families need locations close to their school, close to bus transportation, close to be able to get on the bus and get to work, etc. So that one to me is critical for successful affordable housing. We don't want to just stick them out where it's far and makes more complications that leads to housing instability.
This is Phil Englehart, and on the distance to amenities, I went through a thought exercise and have a little bit of a problem with the school thing. And it's partly a parochial issue since we live in Pinckney and they're closing the school. But I also think it's a little bit at odds with one of the other things there where we were given points if you were locating in West Lawrence, but we're taking them away if you're not within a half a mile of a school. So in my mind, the way that I was conceiving it was that perhaps there shouldn't be a school criterion there.
This is Leah Roseland. We just have a few minutes left and we're not through the NOFO yet. So I'm going to turn it back over to the chair to make some decisions about how to move forward.
Thank you, Leah. I guess I need to look at the committee. Do we want to schedule like a special time to work on this? Can we do this? Do we want to?
How much is left, Monty? Can we see how much is
Well,
left?
we've almost got through page 1, and there's page 2 and a half left on this matrix, and then there's a whole nother rehab matrix. So
It should go quicker.
Plus the
it should go quicker, but
Application, which is a whole nother document.
and the application, but we don't have to tackle the application today, right?
We do.
We do?
Before all the materials need to be approved by the next meeting, or the other alternative is to change the timeline.
So maybe we need to schedule another meeting just to tackle, the rest of this stuff in between now and the June meeting. Can we do that? Do we have to make notices and all that to?
The AHAB can move to extend this meeting or schedule a special meeting.
I don't know how everyone else's schedule looks like, but I think that this is something that Leah has made sure that is, stated that this is important to move today. I would have the time and dedicate more time to this meeting to be extended if that would be something that would fit anyone else's schedule.
How is everybody else on anybody that cannot extend this meeting for a little while?
For me,
Okay.
I
can
cannot.
extend till 2.
I'll have to drop off at 1. But understand you all, I've seen it, right? It's part of the group that did it, so fully support you all moving forward.
Karen, are you comfortable not being here?
you can certainly carry on without me. You've done it for a lot of years.
Okay.
Well said.
All right. So I'm going to, I guess I would entertain a motion to extend this meeting for an hour to see if we
This
can
is Shannon Lowry, so
get through.
moved.
This is Christina Gentry, I second.
Okay. Any discussion on that? I know we have some people that have to leave, and I appreciate your willingness to let us carry on. Okay. We'll call the roll. Karen,
Yay.
Christina,
Yes.
Erica.
Yes, but I will have to leave at 1:30.
Okay. Thank you. Shannon,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Nicholas,
Yes.
Dana.
Yes, but I too will have to leave at 1:30.
Okay. Sarah,
Yes, I'm leaving now. Thank you.
thank you. Mark,
Yes, I need to leave at 1:30.
Monty, yes. Motion passes 10-0. So we'll at least go while we have a quorum.
Yeah.
So long as we have a quorum, we'll stay.
If it's not thought that we might finish this process within the half hour that you have a quorum, is it worth setting another date while we have all of us here
Yeah, maybe.
too?
Yes,
I don't think
probably
you can
is.
finish with-
Okay. Thoughts about another date? Or would we have to? You have to schedule this room and do all that kind of stuff, Leah. I don't know.
We could use a PDS conference room if needed.
Okay. So what would people think about Wednesday, the 17th?
What time?
I don't know.
I'm available.
Let's call it 11 to 1
Works for me.
on the 17th, Wednesday, the
May
17th,
17th at 1 or
11 to 1.
Yes. that
I
works
may
for
be a
me
little
too.
late, but I'll.
The conference room at PDS is available from 11 to 1, but it is bookended at 1 o'clock, which means the meeting would have to end to allow the next meeting to come in.
Couple minutes early. Okay.
That'll work.
Anybody that does not work for at the moment? Oh, does not. Okay,
Erica has her hand up, I think.
right. I see 3 of them, 3 hands up. So Friday, the 19th.
Oh, so we're not doing,
We're not done yet. No?
I can't do that.
Yeah, this is a crazy week with
Okay.
graduations and things.
Okay.
Friday doesn't work. The 19th doesn't work for me.
So the 17th is out. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know. We have, how many people we have that can't do the 17th? I saw 2. I don't know. Okay, go ahead, Dana. Do you want to say something?
No, I thought unavailable for the
Okay.
17th. That's what my hand was raised.
Okay, is there another time on the 17th that you could work, or is it just that time,
It's that date.
that date? Okay. Monday, the 22nd. What does that look like?
Before 12:30.
11.
Easier, but
Before 12:30?
I'll make whatever work.
Okay. Let's,
You suggesting 11 to 12:30 for you? Is that what you said? I could do that.
I could also do 10:30, 12 to 12:30.
10:30 to 12:30 on the Monday, the 22nd.
That works for me.
Anybody not work for?
Can you get the?
Okay, I think we have a winner. Monday, the 22nd, 10:30 to 12:30.
Do we have a room, Jeff?
It looks like the Ad Astra room over at Riverfront would be available. And also I think this room may also be available.
Okay,
Thank
All
you,
right.
Jeff.
so do we need a motion for that to have a?
Yes.
All right, I need a motion. I'll entertain a motion to have a meeting on Monday, the 22nd from 10:30 to 12:30 to continue work on NOFO and application.
So move.
Second?
Nicholas Ward, a second.
Okay, any discussion? I'm going to call the roll. Karen,
Yes.
Christina,
Yes.
Erica,
Yes.
Shannon,
Yes.
Bill?
Yep.
Nicholas?
Yes.
Dana?
Yes.
Sarah left. Mark?
Yes.
Monty? Yes, that is 5, 6, 7, 9. Motion passes 9-0.
So
Thank you for your work.
no Wednesday, right?
No win. All right. So with that, I think we need to. Are we going to march on a little bit?
Can I
Yeah.
suggest we take like a 5-minute break? just
Sure.
To move around and use the restroom, please.
Yeah. So let's take a 5-minute break. And if you're able to come back and we still have a quorum, we will continue on for maybe half an hour or so.
Whatever, that works.
Okay?
Yep.
All right. So we'll be back here at 1:10. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, welcome back. Monty Sokup, Chair, Affordable Housing Advisory Board. We just took a 5-minute break. We're back. We're going to continue to work on the matrix. I just need to make sure we have a quorum here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6,
It's 7.
7, 8. We have 8,
Cool.
right? Am I right?
How many are on the screen? Oh, no, that doesn't necessarily. We have 5
7.
present. And excuse me.
And 2, 3. We have 8. We have 8. Okay, so we're good. We are good. We have a quorum, so we can just continue on. I believe we were at
We were still at the leverage.
leverage.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
This is Leah Roseland. Before we move back, I just wanted to express gratitude to Erica and Nicholas for helping to coordinate interviews with residents of houses that they have developed. It was a really sweet opportunity. And just so everybody is aware that this is the 5-year anniversary of the affordable housing sales tax. So the city is going to be releasing a series of videos this month to acknowledge the great work that you all have done over the years. So thank you so much for the incredible work you do in our community and for those families whose lives you've changed. Thank you. Okay, now back to the matrix.
Matrix. Feels like, right?
I think from what I recall, there need to be a decision made whether to add the additional 5 points from the access or proximity to resources or the financial information.
Monty Sokup, Chair. I'm going to make modify my suggestion. I think we should move leverage to 20. Leave distance to amenities alone. And I'm going to take it out of developer fee. And I think you go, if it's above 1 point, above a certain percentage.
We don't need to take it out of anything if we're just trying to get to 20.
Oh.
Leah, could you share screen, please, for those of us on Zoom?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Thank you.
This was 10. So.
Can't see.
Right.
No, I think we have to get 5 more points. And I think my suggestion is that we take it out of developer fee and either give them 5 points if they're above or below a certain point and 0 if they're above a certain point. I don't think that's a huge factor.
Deal. Right.
It's worth 5 points if they're below a certain amount, but if it's a great project, I would hate that to sway too heavily. So I'm suggesting developer fee is 5 points.
And leave distance alone.
And leave the distance to amenities alone.
So we took leverage to 20, right? From 10.
That's right.
So we
Thank
doubled
you.
it. Okay.
Thank you for reminding me.
We doubled it.
I could support that.
Nicholas, Order tenants to homeowners, what would then be the suggestion with developer fee? Would it be that
I think
it's an amalgamation, so it's like a 15% gets you the full point under 15%?
No, I think you'd use a number like 7 for developer fee.
Okay.
If you're above 7, you get 0. If you're below 7, you get 5. It could be 10. I mean, somebody pick a number. I just think 7's not an unreasonable number.
Any disagreement with changing the developer fee to 5 points in order to add the extra 5 to leverage? Okay. So for how we get there, it was recommended just to have 2 categories. What do we want the cutoff to be?
I'm suggesting 7% for accepting subsidy. I mean, normal developer fee would probably be more in the 15% range on a for-profit project, but you're accepting public funds here. And I think 7's not an unreasonable number. It's only 5 points.
Any
Seems
disagreement?
reasonable to me.
Any disagreement?
No disagreement here.
We have a lot of projects that have no developer fee, so I mean,
And I'll take a quick moment to thank Dana Ortiz for making sure that we continue with the distance to amenities as reflected in her remark. That is a very important decision making understanding as if you are a person who is a resident at some of our future projects. So yeah, thank you for that, Dana.
Okay, so now did you all have any additional comments regarding developer fees, or did we hit that with the last change? Good on developer fees? Okay. Organizational capacity and experience. There's a table in the application where they list similar projects that they've done. Any recommendations for changes on this one? Okay. Staff experience, same thing. They list number of years of experience of their staff. Any suggested changes here?
Mark Buell, just an editorial. You're creating a disadvantage for new blood, but anyway, that's if they haven't done it before, then doesn't mean they can't do it today. You know, there's another 195 points they have to earn to.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I'll speak to that a little bit too. I think the bar is fairly low at 5 years. If you have a team of people, we're asking for 3 people, and cumulatively they don't have 5 years of experience. I think that's significant enough to mark as a point. And then I will also add that we've worked with some that don't have any experience, and it is you earn it. You earn those. Yeah. It takes some knowledge and experience in the field to be able to work in this arena.
Okay.
So I think it's about a valid point.
All right. That's fine.
Yeah.
We good to move on?
We get to move on.
We get to move on. Yay. Accessibility access. This is what was discussed in the NOFO committee. I was going to offer a recommendation that perhaps the AHAB consider stacking points for every accessibility feature, similar to what we've done for distance to amenities. Because if this way, it's like, so if they have one, like if they have wide hallways, for example, is that enough to qualify, or what sort of? But that's my thought. Any other or any thoughts or recommendations on this one? Or are we good the way it is?
So, Nicholas, Lieutenant Homeowners, what's the specific change? Sorry, suggested.
Well, and this is Shannon Lowry. Before we get there, who's going to confirm this? Because universal design is it's a building code sort of thing. And so what happens? They say in their application, yes, we do. And then we go through the whole process and we give them the money, and then they actually don't. And maybe they only did right. And I don't even think we'd know it until the units are built. So how are they substantiating that this is happening?
This is Leah Roseland. If they have plans and they're asked to submit them, otherwise we're trusting the applicants, similar to, kind of all the questions.
Yeah, maybe this Monty Sokup Chair, maybe we can work that into the development agreement if they, say they're going to have a certain percentage. that we could work that into the development agreement so they don't get the money until they prove up that they've done this. Is that a reasonable check, do you think, Shannon?
Yes, yeah, I do. And I mean,
Okay.
and honestly, there's a bunch of different standards out there. HUD has its own accessibility standard.
Right.
Universal design is a different standard. I mean, so I mean, it's just a KHRC had a different one. So I just think it's real important to be, what are we talking about, right? And I agree with Leah, like, it's not enough if you if you don't have the turning radius in the bathrooms, right? I mean,
Right.
it's not enough. Whatever else you have, if you don't have that, from my perspective, it's not accessible.
Right. This Monty Sokup chair, this 20% is a pretty high threshold, I would say, to start with too, but we have to start somewhere. This is certainly going to drive. I think if you're doing, you know, an apartment complex with 50 units, you're probably not going to have 10 of them be 12 accessible. Unlikely, I think, but not a bad place to start. So maybe we try this and see where it goes. I do like the idea of getting points for it, but you know, if you're doing 2 houses, you can get the 50%. Right? If you're doing 50, you're probably not. But anyway, I'm good with this the way it is, I guess. At least for this round. See what we get.
This is Leah Roseland. So any accessibility feature then any accessibility feature in the unit would count, even if it's just one. And then we're just looking at how many of like that one feature.
I think this is Monty Sokup chair. I think I would try to find some way to tie it to, you know, you call it ADA compliant. Do you call it, you know, is there a standard out there that you build to, whether that's this universal design or what? But, you know, for a building to be ADA compliant, that has thousands of pages of definition around what that means. So
this is Leah Roseland. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, Nicholas, tennis homeowners. I was going to say the way that we differentiate is we do reference universal design, but then we describe units that we're building as being either fully accessible or visitable. And the reason that we would use the term visitable is if it's a 2-story unit, the upstairs is obviously not going to be fully accessible, but the downstairs, the bathroom will have turning radiuses, the doors will have the correct width, and it's someone's visiting the house versus the main inhabitant of the house. I don't know how you put that into this language, but it's
complex.
That we're also wanting there to be more density. So if you're building 2 or 3 story units without elevators, you're kind of disqualified. It's also not that many points. This is something we really value, but it's just 5 points.
Right.
So there's that consideration too, that we're not throwing the baby out. It's not negligible, but it's a little bit, it is, in terms of the points you get for meeting that. In some ways, I would say it should be more incentivized. Maybe that's something next year, but more incentivized that people that are developing are making those units accessible.
I think this also ties into how community engagement piece, and that maybe the community an opportunity for applicants to take advantage of Independence Inc. or others that have the accessibility to their forefront in the design, and then that could be something that they could put into their applications that they have spoken with Independence Inc. I don't know. I'm just thinking about how this application could be creative, and we think we're asking for some real intentional work to be done as far as what we're asking applicants and giving points for. So I feel that it's a good way to rubric, and I think we should be kept as is.
Nicholas Ward, one more thing I was going to say is that, I mean, it's here, it's listed. talking about disabilities, but I think more and more the way that we're encountering accessibility has to do with individuals aging in place, that consideration. And so the accessibility component, if there's stairs out front, you're not just talking about someone who's maybe has a mobility impairment, but you're talking about somebody in their 80s who's going to have a harder time potentially with utilizing stairs. And so as we're developing housing stock in the community, that we're looking at who's using that over time, who's using that not as the first owner or inhabitant, but how that's being used over the next 40, 50 years and who it's accessible to. So I would say, I mean, I think it's fine the way it is, but I think next year, maybe that's something that we give a little bit more weight to and prioritize more.
This is Leah Roseland. Just a couple comments. So I deleted the specific language about people with disabilities to Nicholas's point and just and instead change it to accessibility access. Any disagreements with changing that language? Okay. The other point was there are specific standards for, like folks have said, ADA compliance and operationalizing again what universal design means, and I'll link to those on the website or provide some materials for applicants to refer to. My final point is that one of the recommendations in the housing and homelessness strategic plan that the equity and inclusion group is making, including of the AHAB, is that all AHAB funding, all local funding, funded projects require universal design. So that's something for the AHAB to consider. It sounds like maybe for the next round, give some more thought about that in terms of alignment with equitable access.
Yeah, this Monty Sokup chair, just can't not comment on that. I think we could look at a percentage being required, that the reality of building every unit in an accessible fashion just isn't financially feasible. I mean, it's probably a 20% increase. I mean, I know for, the ADA is increasing the size of their circle from 5 feet to almost 7 feet in next year. I mean, to think of the square footage that takes. So I'm not saying we should do it, but we're going to have to be realistic about what can be accomplished and what should be accomplished when the population isn't. And I know we need these units, but the population's not 100%. So we shouldn't be building 100% of our units.
Well, so. And I guess I don't want to derail this, but Leah, could you put that on our next meeting to discuss how we coordinate our plans and our NOFO and our matrix with what is the city and county's strategic plan, because they're different. And
I can't believe
that seems a weird position to put the city commission in, that our plan is different than what's
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, this is Leah Roseland. That was the intent to happen today, starting with the affordable housing section. We just didn't get to it. That's why we're having those groups present with the intent of aligning those strategies and goals. So as long as Gabby's still available next month, then the affordable housing section will be covered next month. And then we'll still have the equity and inclusion section next month. And if the AHAB wants to look at the other sections for alignment, I'm happy to coordinate that as well, as although the other sections may not be like relevant to the AHAB, but absolutely.
So are we good on accessible units? Can we move on? And we're also at 1:30. So I want to note that we're going to drop a few people off.
Okay.
probably might be below quorum, right?
So we'll probably lose our quorum. So
Okay, well, let's get
we
through.
might need to stop there. Or do you got one more you want to
Can
do?
we get to the app? I mean, this first one? Well, I mean, what are we
As long
gonna,
as people can stay, when we lose a quorum, we can't.
I understand, but
Well, let's
location. We're gonna,
I'm good with location. Let's just, like, I think maybe we go to anybody have a problem, right?
right.
Rather than the discussion.
all right. Okay, continuing on. Any changes with location?
This is Phil Engelhardt. I hate to be a busybody and so forth, but I kind of have a problem with the distance and location, the inconsistency in the distance and location criteria that are here. You're taking away points for infill in, East Lawrence, North Lawrence, places where schools are being closed. You're disadvantaging those opportunities from my perspective.
Bill, are you talking about the location category or the distance to amenities?
Well, the fact that the way they are tied together, in effect, I believe disadvantages, since I'm Pinckney centric, it disadvantages me, in my neighborhood in two different ways. So that a potential developer loses 10 points by that location.
So Phil, can I possibly change the paradigm and say what we're really trying to incentivize is affordable projects being in West Lawrence, because quite frankly, we have the vast majority of all the affordable units are in East and North Lawrence. And we have very few in West Lawrence. And what we're trying to do is not concentrate poverty in some of our older neighborhoods. And so this, I believe, from years and years of us working on it, is to try to incentivize building in the West.
And I appreciate that point. I appreciate that.
Are other members interested in changing the location or distance to amenities categories or points? Okay.
This is Monty Sokup. I might just change the language instead of using East and West Lawrence, because we seem to pit these two neighborhoods against each other, these two parts of the city against each other. Maybe we say east of Iowa, west of Iowa, something like that. So we're not calling, I don't know if that's better or not, but I
think, if you want to get more specific and take the names away, there's census tracts that are East Lawrence, North Lawrence, low income areas around town. I've forgotten them. I used to know them all. Far East Lawrence, etc.
maybe
that you could identify those census tracts and get what I think you're trying to get, which is encouragement where there's not much mixed housing, I'll call it.
I like that.
And to further your discussion, I know, Nick, I'm sorry if you had something to say. I think we can also add for area codes, if that's something that's even more of a detail.
Yeah.
I know you said census tracts, it's pretty much the same thing, but area codes are distinctive as well. So we could make that to be something.
Okay. So Leah, if nobody disagrees, can you incorporate that where we have a different way of identifying and not calling it East and West Lawrence? Okay.
Well, Joe. We good to move on to infill?
Mm-hmm.
Any changes? Any disagreements with the infill? Any other discussion or not discussion? Any disagreements around distance to amenities?
This is Monty Sokup. I'm struggling with infill. I know it's a objective, but I mean, if we could get new affordable housing in new
Right.
developments, like you
want
would
it out
with
west, don't we?
we seem to be disincentivizing that, and I may have added this, Leah, when we had the discussion. I'm sorry, but as I read that, it's like disincentivizing affordable housing in new developments.
Well, location and infill, let's call it 10 points. Get back to the.
Well, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I believe the infill is also a goal with other city plans.
Oh, certainly.
So
Yeah,
I'm
no
not
kidding.
sure that the AHAB can
Yes, we
Oh,
can.
Well, the city commission decisions are like, the AHAB cannot make a decision that would counter a city commission,
Okay.
but the points could be changed or the way that it's discussed.
I might have a suggestion that works. It's that in that same vein of like pitting one thing against Nicholas Ward as tennis homeowners, pitting one thing against the other. If we just take out the language that says project will be developed in a new annexation or undeveloped area equals 0 points, and we just have project will provide infill development 5 points, and then that way we're not disincentivizing something. We're not making that statement. We're just saying that we are incentivizing infill development.
Any
we
disagreement?
I agree with that.
I could live with that.
Me too.
Okay.
I could live with that.
Okay. Any concerns with distance to amenities? Feasibility and site control? Any changes?
This is Phil Englehart. I'm talking about a change, but I would presume, as I indicated to you, Leah, that you all will provide some examples of past site plans and design plans that have been, awarded AHAB funds, so that those of us who have not gone through the process will have some idea about, what were considered to be good site plans and good design acceptable site plans and design plans versus non-acceptable site plans and design plans.
This is Leah Roseland. So you're actually taking it a step further, which is awesome. But I think the intent of this was just, do they have design plans outlining the number of units so that we can verify what they're proposing?
Oh, okay. Okay.
Not that we're evaluating the plans.
Okay. Got you.
Any other, we good with that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Length of affordability. There was a comment about, let's see, a member requested discussion around a recommendation that any period of affordability over 30 years should be ranked the same as in perpetuity. Are there other members interested in changing the scoring?
Nicholas Ward tennis homeowners, I don't agree with that. Unless we had identified funding in the city and we knew that we were going to purchase every single thing that rolls out of affordability at 15 or 30 years, that it's not the same thing, and that permanent is permanent and 30 years is 30 years. And we want, we all hope that the sales tax gets renewed multiple times going forward, but at some point in the future, it might not. And we don't want those units disappearing. So open the discussion for sure, but that's my perspective on it.
This is Phil Englehart, and I was one who made that comment to Leah. And my rationale is basically a financial rationale. The notion that there may be other finance mechanisms that look more like conventional 30-year mortgages that may evolve in the future. Now, I know this is just for this year, and so maybe it's not that big of a deal, but the underlying intent there was that there may be, if we could encourage people who were bringing alternative financial mechanisms to the table, it probably would be a good thing. And that's why I made that comment of 30 years. We do, 10-year contract for deeds on affordable housing. That doesn't really work in Lawrence. Housing's too high, but 30 years or something intermediate to that might work. So that was why I made that comment.
Are other members interested in changing the points values for length of affordability? Okay, hearing none. Moving on to sustainability. So it's 5 points if they incorporate any of these items. Any changes for the sustainability?
Monty, Sokup Chair, sorry, we did lose Mark. I believe we still have a quorum.
I believe so.
Do we? I just want to make sure we're not carrying on when we really shouldn't be. We just need 7, I believe. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So if we have 3 online, which I'm not sure we do.
No,
I don't think we're at.
No.
I'm still online.
It looks like we just have Shannon
5.
online and everybody else dropped off.
So I think we need to stop here. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for staying. Good work today. Those of us that are left here at the table. And we will carry on at our next meeting schedule.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks.